right, welcome back to our YPN web series, our master series that the YPN committee has been putting together. My name is James Malonis. I'm a director for the Ontario Real Estate Association servicing Central Ontario, and I'm also the chair of the 2020 Young Professionals Network for OREA. Today we have a very exciting panel of esteemed colleagues, all from the Young Professionals Network, ranging from Toronto well into the northern regions of Thunder Bay. And we are here to talk about everything being a second generation realtor. So I would like to introduce Vanessa, Brian, Anastasia, David, and Kelsey. If y'all could turn on your cameras and join me as we get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you to everyone who was watching. I'm just going to go through the list here. If you can just introduce yourself, the regions that you're from, and who do you work with. I'll start off with Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I work in Toronto, GTA, and I work with my mother.
Awesome. We'll get into that shortly. David.
How's everybody doing there? My name's David Kurt. I'm from Sudbury, Ontario, and I followed my father's footsteps in the business.
Fabulous. Anastasia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anastasia Langiano. So I am a broker owner up in OREA, Ontario. I followed also, well, not quite like David, but I followed my mom's footsteps. So that what sort of brought me into real estate now. But I currently work with my brother. So that creates an interesting dynamic for sure.
Absolutely. Kelsey.
Hi, everybody. I am Kelsey. I'm from Thunder Bay, and I actually work with my grandfather and my mother and my father, and my sister's our administrator, and we actually own a brokerage up here.
So you're a full family.
Full family. It's pretty fun, interesting days.
And Brian.
Cool. Yeah, I'm Brian Santos. I'm a broker in Kitchener-Waterloo. I also sit on the OREA board of directors. And yeah, both my parents are in real estate, and also my wife. So it's real estate all the time.
I don't know how you guys do it. I give you all mad props. Personally, I couldn't. And I know some of your working dynamics. Vanessa and her mom more so, because we do trade in the same market. And I really respect how you guys can manage with families. It must be a challenge at times, especially given the fact that we're second generation and we have such different marketing tactics from our parents, right? And the old school kind of methodology of real estate. David, so how long have your parents been in the business?
My dad was in the business probably about a decade before I got in, and I've been in the business now about 15 years. So yeah, like it wasn't where I remember being like 2 and 3 years old and seeing him as a realtor, but he got into it later in his life. But it was still interesting to see that blend and see that shift towards, the freedom and the mentality of being a realtor and not really working that 9-to-5 job. So I was young enough to kind of, be able to notice that something was different on the home front. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so Kelsey, you said your grandfather is a real estate agent as well.
Yes, and he's still fully licensed. He keeps up with us all. It's pretty awesome. So he started the brokerage in the 70s, actually. So
Okay.
yeah, so we're a well-known family brokerage, and then we recently went to a franchise about 4 years ago, and that's been pretty cool. But yeah, we've definitely have some fun working together. All I've ever known is real estate. My dad's been a realtor since I was a baby, and then my mom jumped on board. I can't even remember her not being an agent. When I was 14, I started working there. They did not want me to be a realtor, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to show you guys up. And so I actually am not a team with them. We run the brokerage together, and I work separate, and the three of them work as a team. So it's kind of a different dynamic, but
Okay.
it's pretty cool. It works well. I've been doing it for 11 years in September, so we make it work.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a whole a whole fun time.
Whole different dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I bet. So Brian, both your parents are real estate agents and Joy as well.
Yeah.
So what is that like? Are you guys all at the same brokerage?
Yeah, we are now. Like Joy initially was at a different brokerage. We met just in the business, like a lot of the couples do, was at an open house. But now we work together as a big happy family. But of course, you work with families. Some days are happier than others.
Right.
But Yeah, generally it works out pretty well. Yeah, my dad's been in the business a long time. I think last year was 45 years in the business.
Wow.
So I kind of grew up with it, and I still remember like yeah, back when there was no like MLS system like we have today. So just driving around, dropping off those catalogs to all the clients' homes, and the clients would then like highlight what they wanted to see, and then you'd go and book those showings, and you just hang out in the the back seat of the car while parents would go show homes. So definitely grew up in the business, and I never thought I'd be in real estate. They didn't encourage me to do it. It just kind of happened. It's one of those jobs. Sometimes I think it finds you more than you find it, but it's very rewarding. And the more I do it, the more I enjoy it, and absolutely love it. And can't imagine doing anything else now.
Yeah, for sure. So Anastasia, you said you followed your mom's footsteps. Can you talk about that? Because you're a broker owner.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, my story is a little bit unique, if you will. So I grew up, my mom started, I don't know, she got her license sometime in the 80s, and then moved up to Aurelia. We had some family up here. Her brother was actually doing quite a lot of development up in Aurelia in the early 90s. So she came up here and started selling for him first, having sold in Toronto. And early on, I think it was in 2000, actually, she opened up her own real estate brokerage. So I remember, like some of you guys are like Brian was saying, sitting in the back seat of the car, waiting for your parents to finish showing a house. So for me, I definitely grew up in it. I didn't always think that I was going to get in real estate. Truth be told, I was like, I'm doing anything but real estate. And I think that was just because, you have, your family, like everybody knows realtors. My mom was very prominent in the community. So it's like, oh, I want to do my own thing. But of course, she had me work as the receptionist growing up. So from like 13, I'd be sitting here on Saturday morning doing my homework when it was quiet and answering the phones. So it was kind of cool to be exposed to it in that regard. But no, my mom always encouraged me to get my license. So I started it when I was 18, just before I went off to university, and then actually registered it, I guess a couple years after that, once I finished all the courses. And here we are. So it was a family business. Originally, it was just myself for the last 4 years. So my brother actually joined on, which is pretty cool. He's been with us just over a year now, and he loves it. So yeah, we didn't think this is really the path that we were going to take, but I'm really happy to be here. And I think that there's a lot of excitement in it, and things change every day, right? You're always learning something new. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vanessa, your mom has been in the business, I want to say forever. And like at least 20-ish years, I would think.
Yeah, I think she's in her 26th year now.
Wow. Yeah. See, like I look at Vanessa's mom as kind of like my real estate mom sometimes, because again, we trade in the same market, and I call her when I need things. And so did you always start with your mom, or did you start separate?
So I didn't always think I would go into real estate, and a lot of you, I grew up the same way, in the back of the car, coming in for showings, sometimes weekends hiding out in a corner of a house for open house with coloring books. And my mom would use me to be like, look, it's such a family-friendly house. Look at it right here. So I grew up with all of that, and I decided I wanted nothing to do with it, and I was going to go into the fashion industry. Did that, got married, had a kid. Realized fashion industry and children do not go well together. Some might argue that real estate doesn't either, but I started working with her as an assistant, and I realized I don't like the paperwork part, but she started taking me on appointments, and I loved it. So I got my license, left her, went and worked for a team for a year, and then realized how valuable it is to have someone that will always have your best interest at heart in terms of a partner. So I went back to work with her, but I really felt like I needed to like sow my own oats, experience real estate without her with me. And we've been together for 4 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to go into, and this is one where you guys can be completely open here, because we know your parents are not watching. So what struggles, and by whoever wants to answer this first, by all means, jump in. What struggles do you face working with family?
The biggest struggle that like I kind of hit right off the bat, and I was like, we're all young when we first got in the business, especially when we followed our parents in into the door. But there's this, everybody else you look at is just like, oh, your parents are handing you this business, or it's just like, oh, your success, all your success you're having is, oh, I understand because your dad's in the business or something, or your mom's in the business. And I remember just getting that over and over again and just being so frustrated and angry with that. And like when I got in the business, I was the first agent to use Kijiji kind of thing. So like in my marketplace, that was unheard of kind of thing. So again, we fight and claw to create our own business in whatever way, shape, or form. So that was the first struggle that I really hit. And then the secondary struggle came because like, obviously you're going to be the shadow behind the people that you followed into the business, right? Like for me, it was my dad, and he was I signed on kind of as a buyer agent for him kind of thing at first. And then just by the nature of it, like we're going to be on the upward swing and they're going to be probably on a downward swing. So like, there's a point where I wanted to do more and he wanted to do less. So then it was like that power struggle a little bit between like who's going to be kind of the lead role. And then, so that's what like I created Team Kurt like 3 years after I joined him, but it was like me kind of, fostering it and jumping ahead kind of thing. And that ultimately led to me starting my own brokerage. And like now he's working here, and actually my little sister just became licensed last week. So she's just finishing up getting signed on. She's going to be part of the brokerage here as well kind of thing. But like that, it's the first struggle is that everybody, like you're going to, hopefully you guys have your own version of success, and people are going to look around and be like, oh, it's, you got handed this success kind of thing. And that puts a chip on your shoulder for sure, at least me. And then the second thing is that power struggle between where you're on the upward swing and someone else is on the downward swing, and what's that momentum and what's that shift going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of to add to that a little bit, I felt the same way when I first started. I still get it 11 years in, and they're like, oh, you do this because your parents are so successful. And I'm like, let's fast forward back to when I started. And you know how when you start, you can usually sell houses to your family, to your friends, to all those people. Well, I didn't get any of that because I wasn't a team with my parents, because they wanted me to prove that I have what I have and that I can be my own person before I ever teamed up with them. Keep in mind, I'm still not a team with them. I'm still doing my own thing, but it works well for us. And I still to this day get it. And I didn't get all my friends, my family, anything. They all deal with my parents. So I basically had to go out as an 18-year-old with my real estate license and try and figure out who the heck I'm going to sell houses to. And I did it. I started off with a little Pontiac Sunfire, and I looked at my dad and I said, no one's going to take me seriously pulling up to a $400,000 house driving this. I need to get something better. And 4 months in the business, I ended up selling enough to buy myself a nicer vehicle, and it just didn't stop from there. It just became goal after goal after goal, and I just didn't let anything get in the way. I didn't let my age get in the way, anything. And they've been my biggest supporters. They mellow me out a little bit when my head gets too big sometimes, but it's really nice working with them and having them to motivate you all the time too. Even though I'm not directly working with them, I'm still there with them.
Right. So Brian, I was going to just ask you, because you don't leave it. Like you got mom and dad and Joy. So like, what struggles are you facing with that?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge sometimes working with your folks is they've had their success, right? And you have yours, and you do business a little bit differently given your age. And finding that that blend and that balance can be tricky sometimes, because you don't want to say, hey, your way is not the right way, because they did really well that way. And then you have different ideas, like David mentioned, even Kijiji, or different styles of marketing. So finding that balance when you're still working with them sometimes can be a bit tricky. And then I think the other thing, when you work with family and those that you love, you're often very candid with them. And sometimes conversations can get heated, or you say things to them that you wouldn't say if you worked with a friend or just a typical business partner, because you let all your emotions out right away and easily. And sometimes that can be a challenge, having those lines when those lines are kind of all blurry when you're there working with your folks. So yeah, finding those types of that ebb and flow is a bit tricky sometimes, but it's just important to talk with them and why you think certain ideas are going to work.
No, for sure. So I was going to just call you Anastasia, because now your brother has joined. So how is that struggle being broker owner and then having your brother and then kind of working with him?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my story is a little bit interesting. So I mentioned my mom was in the business for many years, and I grew up like many of you you know, going to open houses and whatnot, and being in the car, and, you know, watching my mom as a realtor, like from afar. And then, like I mentioned, as I was growing up, so throughout high school, throughout university, I would, you know, work in the office. So I was kind of an assistant to some of the top producers and just kind of around to help them where they needed. But my mom actually, so my mom passed away 5 years ago now, and she had this real estate brokerage, and I had literally just got my license at the time. And I never had the opportunity to sell with my mom or like learn from my mom actually like as a realtor. Like it's great, I got to do the front end and back end of, you know, the business and understand the whole workings of the brokerage, which is really cool. But as much as you guys are saying, like, you know, these dynamics between parents and yourselves and selling, I'm like, that's my challenge is I wish that I, you know, had that opportunity. Because it's been a lot of like navigating and just hearing people say, oh, well, your mom did it like this, or your mom did it like that. And I'm like, well, my mom's not here anymore. So now it's, you know, our turn to do our own thing and create this the way we want it to be. But working with my brother, oh, David, did you want to say something? I just saw your hand there.
No, I'm just going to follow up to your point. So, but just finish up.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, so now my brother's joined. So the first 4 years, I was kind of here like on my own, figuring it out. But again, my mom was like really involved in OREA, and she had a great network of realtors and just like fabulous mentors who have been so incredible to me in support and whatnot. But having my brother on, challenges, back to your question, I know that was a huge loop around, but question about challenges with my brother, I'll say this. Sometimes you have to know when to like take a step back and just kind of chill, because again, everybody has totally different ideas and wants to do things a different way. So my brother and I have sort of teamed up as partners, but for the most part, we're pretty good. Although I will say, like, even yesterday, we're like, okay, we need to take 10 minutes away from each other before we rip each other's heads off. So just kind of understanding and knowing, like, okay, you know what, you can do things your way, I can do things my way, find a common ground so that you're still working towards a common goal and achieving that together. So being on the same page sometimes can be tricky, but you figure it out with communication, I'd say. So.
Just to follow up with that point there too, I think it's really, really interesting, because I've never been on a panel with second gen realtors before, but how everybody, it's so easy to grow up with, you know, having parents that work a 9-to-5 job or something like that. But I think one of the greatest parts of having a parent in the business is you just learn that culture of like, you know, like it's that entrepreneurial spirit. And that's probably like the biggest thing that like having somebody in the business or having that to look up to is that you just kind of understand that entrepreneurial spirit. And really, you know, that's something I think that is like, without said, that one of the biggest points of having a parent that's in the business that you're able to kind of follow up on. So it's really cool to see everybody kind of echo that in this group.
Yeah, so like my parents are not in the business. My parents have no ties to real estate whatsoever, other than kind of getting involved with buys and flips over the years. But they were both entrepreneurs. So I get the hustle. Like I know what you guys kind of went through. So I tagged along. I was their little like receptionist. I would sit in the car and I would play. You remember like the old Nokia phones, you play Snake on it? Like while they were doing business, that's what I would do. And so I kind of not grew up in the industry, but kind of second to, so I kind of watched it. And it's interesting listening to you guys now, going what you went through, because my mom's going to start her real estate schooling. So she's going to come work underneath me, which I think is going to be completely odd for me, having my mom work with me, because she's, she's my mentor, but it's the reverse now. So I'm excited for how that's going to work. Bleeding on to the next question here, I'm going to start with you, Vanessa. What's the most rewarding part about working with family?
Well, I would say, honestly, the most rewarding part is just having someone that no matter what circumstance always has your back and always has your best interest at heart. I think the biggest thing to remember, though, is if you're going to do this, that you already have to have an extremely strong relationship with your family member. It can't be toxic in any way, because this kind of environment, when you're working full time with your family, can cause a lot of issues. But saying that, I have a great bond with her, and I think one of the other great things is I get to see her every day. That sounds super corny, but If I worked another job, I would see her maybe once a week,
Mhm.
but I see her every day.
So do you find, because I know your son is quite young, do you find you having to drop off your son to your mom's if you're on a showing, if you guys are kind of balancing out a workload, or do you, like, how does that work?
I honestly, I thought that would be the case, that I would be like, we could just toss each other off, but we have the same type of job. So I actually don't end up dropping him off with her. But if I have to be there for him, I know that she's got my back. So if I need to do a showing or we share clients, that I know if I need to do something with my son Levi, that she can jump in. And then if she needs something, you know, my grandparents are getting older. Some of them live in Nova Scotia. If she needs to go somewhere, I can handle everything and take care of it for her, and it gives her peace of mind. And you know, she's younger. She's 57, so she says, you know, I've got at least 10 years before I leave it to you, and you start, you know, taking the role of leading the team. And so she has a while to go. However, she's setting herself up to be able to back down and know that everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most rewarding thing, is the legacy for her too.
Yeah.
David? For me personally, like I lost my mom like at 25. So like knowing how important a family relationship is, and when I lost my mom, like we became really like super close to the family, me and my sisters and things like that. But like knowing that, and again, it's trying sometimes you're going to blow up and like have, like, there's days where like, I'm like, I'm it's not going to work. We can't be working together anymore and things like that. But like reflecting back on it, and especially now that I have kids, and my kids are like 2, 4, and 6. So they're coming up now, but like legacy's on my mind all the time. And the fact that I get to, you know, work with my dad and see my dad in the office every single day, like I just know it means so much, even if I'm not appreciating it in the moments, which a lot of times I don't. It's like in the grand scheme, I'm going to look back and be like, wow, I was so lucky that I got to spend that much time, you know, get to see my dad every single day at a different level and kind of thing. And I'm looking back and reflecting back, I just know it's going to mean so much in the future. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else want to just chime in on that question about rewarding?
Yeah, I do. I really like what you guys are saying, right? It's I think we have to really come back to gratitude and really understand, what's in front of us and how special that is, because some people, you know, maybe are not fortunate to maybe have those people in their life. I know myself, like I mentioned with my mom, it's that's something I would have loved to, you know, I would have loved to work with her. I even still, like, I have broker questions. I'm calling, you know, her colleagues and, you know, people that knew her, and thinking, man, I wish I'd just pick up the phone and call my mom, because sometimes it sounds like a stupid question too, but there are no stupid questions. Okay. Ask away, whatever you guys, you know, are thinking. But in terms of what the most rewarding is, I have to agree. Like, so for my brother, like I mentioned, he wasn't in the business for the last, the last 5 years, so to speak. He's been with us now the last year or so. And in that, like, I can even just tell it's such a game changer, because like Vanessa has shared too, you're working with somebody that really does have your best interest at heart, and you're working towards a common goal, and you want to achieve something together, and knowing that both people, are interested in that same level is, not just interested, but dedicated and committed to achieving that same goal is what's really special about it. And being able to lean on somebody else, you know, or also have that person where, you know, maybe you don't possess like all the strengths, right? Everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses. So working with somebody, and in my case, I'll speak, you know, about my brother, there's some areas that he just totally excels at over myself, and vice versa. So having that balance has been really great. And yeah, getting to see my brother in the office every day, like David said too, like there are definitely moments where it's like, can I be working with you? I don't know, but you know, you figure it out, and I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, you learn and you grow, and it's kind of cool too, because you're able to have these conversations outside of the office. And as you guys know, being a realtor, you're literally working all the time, and you're always talking about real estate. So it's kind of cool to have somebody, you know, in your close circle that you're able to talk about real estate and all the different aspects as well. It's not just about, you know, a house for sale or, you know, working with a buyer, whatever the case may be. So being able to have those conversations and have those similar interests is pretty special too.
Mm-hmm. So since you guys work with your families, and I'm assuming the older generation has a certain style of real estate clientele that they work with, maybe it's downsizers, empty nesters, have you guys found a niche within your family dynamic, or as an individual working with family, within the family kind of umbrella, that you specialize in?
Me personally, like I just find that you deal with what you're familiar with. So I wouldn't really call it a niche, but like when I was, you know, 22 years old, I dealt with a lot of first time home buyers. Just like, that's who I was. Like, I went through that experience. And like, I remember buying my house probably about a year after I was licensed. I'm like, man, like everybody should need to buy a house first before they actually sell one, because like, that's a big process. I'm like, oh, I can put my taxes with my mortgage, like things like that, that just like, you know, you don't know until you kind of walk through the motions. And now I've got a bunch of young kids, and like, I deal with a lot of step up buyers. So I don't think it's like necessarily the fact that like my dad was in the business and now but it's just like you deal with people that are in a similar position to where you are in your life. And that's, at least that's for me, where I'm dealing with, like currently I'm dealing with a lot of people that have young kids and now are looking for that bigger house and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Like when I started working, I got my license when I was in university. My parents just kind of like, hey, maybe you should grab it. And I did. And it was just, did it while I was doing my schooling at the same time. I kind of fell in that way. And we worked servicing the Portuguese community. My parents are Portuguese immigrants. I was born here, but they taught me, you know, to speak the language. So it was really helpful to work with the Portuguese community. And oftentimes they want to work with someone that speaks the same language because it's more comfortable that way. So yeah, I definitely appreciated the leads that they brought in, because I think it's one of the toughest things in business is lead generation. And for them to have that, that's not lost to me. I always appreciated that. And especially now, because like most people, you know, our age, that they're buyers. And what's really tough in our marketplace right now are listings. There's a real lack of inventory. And thankfully, you know, the people that my folks know, they're in the position right now of selling their homes. So it's great to be able to help out in that process, though. So it's worked out rather well. But like David said, like you oftentimes deal with people that you know are close to you in age. And when I first started out, I was doing a lot of leases and rentals that no one wanted to do, because my parents hired a property management company to take care of the rentals. And when they had those leads to come in, they didn't bother dealing with them. And I saw opportunity there because I'm like, wait, you get how much? And oftentimes, then those tenants would they'd become buyers down the line. So I carved a pretty good niche there, is doing rentals at the very beginning, because no one really wanted to do them. And I thought I was very happy with you know, what I was getting paid to do it, and then the doors that it would open by you know, making landlords happy, and then meeting other prospective buyers that you know, were great tenants. Mm-hmm. That's how I kind of got going at the very beginning.
Just to follow up on Brian's point there too, like it's, and there's a ton of great realtors out there that aren't second generation or anything like that, but being somebody that sees that it's a family business or whatever, like you realize how relationship driven this business is. And you, like, people have those they dealt with your parents 30 years ago and they're still calling like your parents up out of the blue kind of thing, right? So it like, I think that just rubs off on us, and like we completely see this business as a relationship and not a transactional. And you look in your marketplace and you know that there's transactional realtors and there's relationship realtors, and like the relationship realtor is always going to win over the long term. Transactionally, you'll be able to make money for sure in the next year or 2 years, but just like Brian said, like it's that relationship and the importance of that relationship that goes a long way.
Awesome. So I got one more question here before we open it up to the audience. If you could give advice to somebody who is recently licensed or looking to join the family in real estate, what advice would you give them?
My family is all about tough love, so have thick skin. I take the constructive criticism amazingly from my dad. Me and my dad kind of have this different dynamic of a relationship. We got that Italian personality, so we kind of butt heads a little bit sometimes, but it's because we both have such different ideas. Just take their constructive criticism because they know what they're talking about. They've proven it time and time again, and they're experts in their field, and they have been for years. So although there is a different way of doing things, just still don't go back to your roots of the old school way. I pride my business on the old school way of education with a new school twist, with the social media and everything like that. And it's been working. So, but you just can't forget where they came from and how their business became a success, because you do need to take pointers from that to make your business successful in the long term, because you never know, things are always changing. So
100%.
So the piece of advice that I'll throw out, and it definitely isn't from like what I practice. So I'm not practicing what I preach, but I'm reflecting back on this and saying what could have made for an easier transaction and a transition. Especially with that, like with one person becoming a little bit more of a power and like becoming a little bit more of the lead. And honestly, if you guys do like annual business planning together, so that you're just kind of on the same page, and you can say like, this is where I picture our business going, and this is where I'd like to kind of go with things. And if you guys sit down and do that like even annually, monthly would be great, but like even annually, that's gonna be really healthy in the long run of like knowing, like kind of writing it out and just knowing where you want to be within the next year, with the next 3 months, or like with the next 5 years kind of thing. So if you guys are on the same page there, I think it's going to be easier for a transition as to kind of through that power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Vanessa?
Sorry, I saw Anastasia's hand up, but I just wanted to piggyback on that when you do that yearly plan, it really clears up any confusion where you think you know exactly, you're both on the same page, where your business plan's going. When you both do those business plans and then meet up together and discuss them, it's amazing what you realize, where one person is on a totally different page in terms of where you're putting your marketing that year, what your goals are, what kind of numbers you want to hit, and how you want to do it. So that is huge. And then the other thing I would say is it's really important to define your roles. So when you join a team, who is the team lead? What are the decisions that are going to be made, and who has the final say? I think that is probably one of the biggest things. We kind of learned the hard way the first year, and then we got a coach, and we also did a DISC personality test to make sure that we were compatible, and then discuss those strengths and how we can be the best team that we can be. And we realized, of course, Lynn's going to be the lead right now, and the plan is for me to be the lead in 10-ish years from now. And that was huge for us. So I would say do that right away.
Mm-hmm. Anastasia?
Yeah, so it's for me, the overall, like the umbrella of what we're all talking about is communication, really. Like you have to be comfortable and have that comfortable in being able to have these conversations, because sometimes they're tough, right? And oftentimes, as much as you think you're totally on the same page, you're not. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's having that, confidence in yourself and in that relationship, whether it's your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, whoever it is, to be able to bring it up, to talk it out, and then just kind of to regroup. So for me, it's communication. That's like a huge one. I think if everybody can, talk about where they're at, and you can figure out how to respect each other's ideas as well, because again, the other theme that we've been talking about is there's a million ways to do one same thing. So just respecting that, everybody has another way of doing it, and how do you do it together? How can you do it your way and I do it my way, but still trying to achieve this same goal? So being open about it is important.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to just open up the floor to questions from the audience here, and Nathan has sent one in. Have you discussed or set rules with your family of things to do or not do? For example, always do a CMA this way, or never say this to a client, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll take the lead on that. I personally haven't. Maybe I think you have to find your own groove. And as like that younger generation, you're going to do your CMA different than maybe an older, that older parents or something like that. So I think it's based on what you want, what you feel comfortable doing. But I think it's like the value system that should be, somewhat the same. So hopefully things like the way that you communicate, the way that you like those value systems that you have, like for me, one of my big value points is like never being afraid to have that difficult conversation. Like I'm going to tell you the hard fact, like I'd rather tell you the truth today than try to tell you the truth in 3 months from now, kind of thing. And that's consistent among me and my dad, but my whole team really it's consistent among. So I would think that as long as you have a similar value system, do your business in whatever way that's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to echo David's sentiments?
I just would like to add, I guess it depends too on how you've really structured, working with that person. So if you actually are doing it sort of like, well, there's different ways to structure a team as well, right? So are you working with the client from A to Z, or are you taking, part of the process and, doing that, and, the other person's doing the other half, or whatever the case may be. But again, I think, like, to answer your question, I'd still say, like, communication, right? Break down what the expectations are, especially with the person who's already established in the business, because they're going to be the person that already has a way of doing things. So yeah, having a conversation around the expectations. But for myself personally, like my brother and I, we sell real estate together, but we're pretty free in allowing each other to do it the way that we each best see fit, right? So long as we have the client's best interest at heart, we're pretty supportive of doing, whatever it is we need to do so that we can get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Julie also dropped a question here, and I think we kind of touched on this briefly, if anyone wants to kind of go back to it. Brian mentioned having a niche. Have any of you also developed one, and if so, how did you come by it? I'm going to just pinpoint Vanessa here, only because, again, we work in the same market, and I know that Vanessa deals with a lot of first-time buyers. So now, are you getting first-time buyers that, besides your own database, are you getting kind of Lynn's clients, first-time buyers being handed down to you?
Yeah, so when I started, I was also doing a lot of leases, and those have turned into first-time buyers. And then the interesting thing, and we touched on this before, is that when you have a relationship-based business, you're just constantly, you're kind of like, you have them at the beginning, you treat them really well, you establish a relationship, you have them for life, and then you have their kids and their grandkids, and that's just the way it goes. And so she's getting calls to downsize clients that maybe bought from her 26 years ago, or just in the neighborhood, because we have a pretty established farm area here in Toronto. And they're now starting to call and go, oh, I have my kid, he just turned 26, he needs to buy a condo, I gave him your number, but he's, he'd rather work with someone younger. Oh, great, my daughter has her license, she's a millennial, she'd love to work with him. And those calls have been coming in more and more. And Lynn, truthfully, isn't really interested in working with clients like that. She doesn't want to work downtown in condos. She doesn't want to be stressed about parking garages and dealing with concierge and management. She thrives at dealing with downsizing, doing family estates, taking them all the way from the home they lived in for 45 years, picking out a retirement residence that suits them best, working with their family members, moving them, getting everything out of the house. And that's like a whole different game. So that's her niche. And then the move ups and the first time buyers are becoming my niche. Yeah.
Awesome. David?
The only comment I'll make about niches, and like, I think that a lot of people think about niche and they think, okay, I've got to focus and I got to like target in on this specific sector or something like that. Like there's demographics and there's sociographics. So like, it doesn't need to be an age group or anything like that. But even like as a broker of record, when I'm bringing like any agent on, like I basically tell them like, focus on the business you want to focus on, and like realize that the rest of it's going to be a paycheck. So like if you're taking a listing or a buyer that's in a different trade, like not a different trade area, but like an area that you're just not trying to specialize in, then realize that that's a short-term paycheck. But like as somebody new, if you could be going to every single property in the area you want to focus on, and you're becoming an expert almost just in an immediate neighborhood, just like it was mentioned, where like if you're for farming a specific neighborhood, you reap the rewards so much when like you're going on a CMA 3 years from now and you can say, I've been in almost every single house on the street. Like that means a lot. And that's where like if you put the emphasis on just trying to like making sure that long-term business is going to be placed, the emphasis is on where you want your business to be in the future. Still go, work with a buyer that's outside or whatever the case may be, but you just realize that that's a paycheck in the short term and not building your business over the long term.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100% with that.
Yeah.
We switched our MLS system over a few years ago, and it actually made it a lot tougher for us. I used to, because Thunder Bay is so small, I could do a CMA basically with my brain. I used to be able to remember what this sold for. If I walked into a house and I went on to value it, I'm like, you know what, that house 3 doors down from you sold for this much money 3 years ago. I used to be able to do that. Now it's hard because they changed to our system and it's just absolutely terrible. So sometimes you don't even see solds come across to educate yourself. So I noticed for a while I was leaning more towards being a listing agent. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't find I'm able to give my clients as much of a service anymore, that I'm not out there showing as many houses. So over the last 3 years, I shifted my business again. And I mean, I'm running ragged, but it's okay because all my clients are happy and I do a lot of buying and selling, and it, you know, it just kind of works. And to flip it back to with my family in terms of niches, the second I've met some of my dad's younger clients, they kind of start to flip to me, which was hard for him to swallow at first because he's like, why don't they want to work with me anymore? I'm like, well, it's because I'm young. It's just different. So now he's adapted to that and he's like, it is what it is. And we kind of work with it. Whereas some of the older people don't quite want to work with me. They'd feel more comfortable working with my dad or my grandfather even. And it just works out. My mom always says when she looks after my business when I'm out of town, my clients miss me, which is kind of a nice thing to know. I know my clients are in good hands with her and everything. She probably is way better at paperwork than I am. I'll give her that because I'm the worst person to follow up with paperwork in my office. And if you ask anyone I work with, they're like, oh gosh, Kelsey and her paperwork. But I still get the job done. And working with the family, it just kind of keeps me going with everything and they keep me accountable. So it's fun.
Yeah. Sorry, Brian.
Oh, sorry, James. I was just going to jump in there. Instead of like a niche, just think of things as opportunities. And for me, leases were just an opportunity. Another one that I took advantage of at the very beginning of my career were just being around other busy agents in the office that, you know, had lots of leads, but they weren't as motivated. They want to go on the weekend. They want to go up north to the cottage. And I was more than happy to help them show homes on Saturdays and Sunday to their clients and take a referral fee. Like for me, like a part of a pie was better than no pie at all. And just being hungry out there. So if other agents in your office or your folks, they need help and there's opportunity there, just jump on it though, right? And for me, it's not necessarily about niche, it's just a type of client that I'm looking for and establish that relationship, because even if they're looking to rent or to buy or to sell, if they have the same type of mindset, it's going to lead to more business versus then just focusing on that transaction.
Mm-hmm. David?
It's not really tied to the niche point, but just one point that to bring up, especially with being a multi-generation realtor. Like for me that now, like I have 3 young kids. So the idea of legacy has been on my mind a lot. And that actually has led to me kind of creating my own brokerage. So I could have some freedom and control and to kind of create what I wanted to create. But I think that I've seen my dad, I followed his footsteps, and now I'm thinking about maybe down the line, and maybe my kids aren't going to be in it, that's fine. But it's just the idea of building something where my kids can point to and be like, Dad did that. That's been on my mind a lot. So more than getting an award that says, oh, I sold X number of volumes or this many deals, actually building something and building something that I'm proud of and that I can have my kids point to and say Dad did that. That's been on my mind a lot. And I think that that's part of, I've seen it because I've kind of taken the reins from my dad. So not really taking over his business, but taking the reins. And now that's, building something that my kids can point to in the future as well. So I just want to make that kind of a comment too.
Yeah. I bring my daughter to put up sold signs because she gets all excited because I'm gone all the time with work and everything. So that's what we do together. When I pick her up from daycare, we go do sold signs and she does a little happy dance, or I've got balloons that say sold on it. I try and make it exciting for her because I'm gone working all the time. Her first stop after she was born was the office. So that kind of just shows you, I really hope that she'll be the 4th generation in this because it would be kind of cool. But it's her second home is at our office. So it's kind of fun.
That sounds amazing. I mean, you guys have touched on some really great points, and I really want to thank you guys for spending your afternoon with me and continue doing what you guys do. I'm inspired by all of you. I love that you can actively and comfortably work with your family, and something that I extremely admire. And to everyone else that's watching, I want to thank you. And I also want to invite you back to our next webinar on September 2nd with a couple of motivational speakers that really are going to help kick off September leaving the negativity of early 2020 behind us and pushing us forward into the fall and not discussing a potential second wave. So thank you guys. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, James.
Thank you.